Do you like to put puzzles together? We had a man a few years ago who was in our church who absolutely loved puzzles. And it was to the point, I think to the excess, that what he would do is typically, a puzzle usually has a picture on it, right? Whether it's a mountain, whether it's a piano, whatever, horse, whatever the picture is. He would turn them over, and what's on the back side? Cardboard, nothing. He would turn them over on the back side and work them without the picture. He loved, well, I don't get that, you might, but he was just one of these guys, loved them. Sometimes when I'm over at one of the retirements home, I'll walk by a room. It's a community room, and there might be several tables out there, and there are puzzles of some form or fashion that's being worked on all those different tables. And the idea is people can come in and pick up a piece and say, oh, it goes right there, and this one goes right there. And over time, they get worked out together. Puzzles are fun. Puzzles are also addicting. If you take one, you put it in there, there's an itch you got to scratch. You got to find the next one, the next one, the next one. Man, I've been here for 3 hours. They can be fun, they can be addicting, but whenever I start a new book of the Bible, I think about it in terms of a puzzle. I think about the box. What's on the box of a puzzle? The picture of what the puzzle is, right? Wouldn't that be so cruel if a company gave you a box of balloons and inside's a mountainscape? That would be pretty cruel, right? That wouldn't doubt that company'd stay in business very long, but kind of fun, wouldn't it? On the box is the picture of the completed form. And inside the box is what? The pieces. Now, pieces come in different shapes and sizes. I mean, if I go down to the nursery, there might be a 6-piece puzzle. I can do that one pretty quickly because those pieces are about that big. They're gigantic. But there are some puzzles that might be 1,000 pieces or 1,500 pieces. The more pieces you have, usually the smaller they get. So whenever you work out a puzzle, you have to consider the size of it. You have to consider the time it's going to take for you to complete it. You also kind of have to really work out how you're going to approach it. I'm one of the guys that if I'm going to work out a puzzle, no matter how many pieces it is, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to sort through and I'm going to find all of the border pieces, okay? I'm going to try to put all those together because I now know how big my puzzle is. There are some people that don't do that. Some people just pick up a piece, put another piece, and when they get it together, they just start working on it from the inside out. And that would drive me crazy. But hey, if that floats your boat, you go do it. Whenever I come to a new book, again, I think of it in terms of that puzzle. How am I going to approach it? How long is this going to take? Where are the pieces, the paragraphs that we were going to need to take time and consider? It really does coordinate in terms of that. We've started the book of Philippians. We began that last week, and I would love to be one of those that just kind of say, okay, open up to chapter 1, verse 1, and jump right in. I'd love to do that, and I could do that, but I'm not sure that's the best approach because I feel like we've got to give some background to this book, some context of what's going on. So if you'll humor me today, let's consider this. The context, the background of Philippians. It all takes place in Acts chapter 16. And there we find the context of Philippians. You're in Acts chapter 16, verse 1. I'm going to throw up a slide here, and it's going to be a map. So as we read, and you kind of keep an eye on there, you're going to see some of these places, okay? If you'll notice, can you see my little red dot here? Real small piece of puzzle. This is Jerusalem. Way up here is Antioch, and Antioch is where they were first called Christians. That's the home church that's sending Paul, Barnabas, Silas, these guys out. This is the mission church, Antioch. My map says this is Paul's second missionary journey. So these arrows are going down to these different places of locations. And we're going to see some of them here in chapter 16. Look with me, verse 1. Paul came also to Derbe and to Lystra. A disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. He was well spoken of by his brothers at Lystra and Iconium, and Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him. Now I'm going to stop there and just make this observation that obviously Timothy's going to be a major help to Paul. He's going to be a companion. He's going to eventually pastor, be out there. Paul's going to write some letters that we have in our Bible to Timothy. Here's a major personage that we finally encounter. And he's going to be well known, not just to the group that's in Ephesus. He's going to be well known to the Philippians. He's actually with Paul, and his name's going to be showing up in this book. Skip down to verse 6. They went through the region of Phrygia, Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. And when they had come to Mysia, they attempted to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So, passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas, and a vision appeared to Paul at night. A man of Macedonia was standing there urging him, saying, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." And when Paul had seen the vision, immediately he sought to go to Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. I'm going to stop right there and just kind of make our way over. We've gone to Derbe, Lystra, Iconium. Paul wanted to go down here in Asia. This is Galatia, and these areas are places that he had been to before, establishing churches. He wanted to go down here to Asia, but the Spirit would not allow him to do it. He needed to go here to Macedonia. So you have the Macedonian call. That's what puts him in Philippi. Verse 11, so setting sail from Troas, we made a direct voyage to Samothrace, and following day to Neapolis, and from there to Philippi, which is a leading city in the district of Macedonia, a Roman colony. We remained in this city some days. Now, there is some significance, historical significance, to this city. It is not a young city. Matter of fact, it was conquered by, do you know the name Alexander the Great? Have you ever heard that name? It was conquered by his father, Philip of Macedon. That's where you get the name Philippi. It had a different name before that. When Philip conquers it, it's now renamed after him, and it became a wealthy city because around it are a bunch of gold mines. There's gold in them there hills, and they started mining it out, and it became wealthy because of its gold mine. Verse 12 tells us that it's a Roman colony. Don't miss those words because that's important. Few places in Rome were Roman colonies. In those places, they didn't pay taxes. Philippi, they had citizens that were generally retired soldiers that now moved into the city. They didn't pay taxes, but because of their service to Rome, they became Roman citizens. Scholars don't even believe that Philippi was one of these places there were a lot of Jews. And they say that because there's no synagogue. We're going to see that in just a moment. But because it doesn't have a synagogue. It's full of Gentiles, primarily ex-soldiers. They don't pay taxes, and they can make up their own laws. It's a Roman colony. It's an exemplary place that Rome established for all to see and implement. But notice verse 13. Paul's there in Philippi, and on the Sabbath day we went outside the gate to the riverside where we supposed there was a place of prayer. There's no synagogue there, so what do the Jews do? If there's any Jews in this city, where would they go if there's no synagogue? And the reason there's no synagogue, as I understand it, as I've read, I think there had to be 10 male households of Jews in order to establish a synagogue. 10's not that many. So there's very few Jews here. If there's no synagogue, historically, the Jews would go to the nearest body of water. There they could worship. Hence, Paul's going to go to the river, supposing there was a place of prayer. What does he find? Well, look again, verse 13, second half of that verse. We sat down and spoke to the women who had come together. One who heard us was a woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira. That's just across the waterway. You'll see it there on the map. She's a seller of purple goods who was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what was being said by Paul, and after she was baptized, and her household as well, she urged us, saying, "If you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come to my house and stay." And she prevailed upon us. I'm going to stop there and just note that the Philippians story is one of 3 conversion experiences. We're going to see them. But here we find Lydia. She's a seller of purple. The second one that we find is one who's not so much privileged. If anything, she's inconvenienced. She's in desperate, dire straits. She's a girl with a spirit of divination. You'll see her in verse 16. As we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a slave girl who had a spirit of divination and brought her owners much gain by fortune telling. How callous can these people be? Anytime you see a demon in the Bible, to my thinking, I think every time you see a demon in the Bible, if it has anything to do with people, it is causing destruction. It is meant for devastation. It is causing and wreaking havoc. They're pitiful souls. And not only is this girl a pitiful soul because she's possessed, she has this spirit of divination. She's making her owners a lot of money. They don't care about her. They care about the dollar or whatever they were using there. Verse 17, she followed Paul and us, crying out, "These men are servants of the Most High God, who proclaim to you the way of salvation." Now that's a good thing, right? These men are proclaiming the way of salvation, but remember who it is that's making this statement. There's a spirit, a demonic spirit in her. Verse 18, she kept doing for many days. So Paul, having greatly been annoyed, turned and said to the spirit, "I command you, in the name of Jesus Christ, come out of her." And it came out of her that very hour. And that's going to set up the third conversion, because what we find is, verse 19, When her owners saw that their hope for gain was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them to the marketplace before the rulers. Skip down to verse 23. When they had inflicted many blows upon them, they threw them into prison, ordering the jailer to keep them safely. Having received this order, he put them into the inner prison and fastened their feet in stocks. You ready for this third conversion? Verse 25, about midnight, Paul and Silas are praying, singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And suddenly, there was a great earthquake so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And immediately, all the doors were open and everyone's bonds were unfastened. When the jailer woke and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried with a loud voice, "Do not harm yourself, for we are all here." The jailer called for lights and rushed in, and trembling with fear, he fell down before Paul and Silas. Then he brought them out and said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" And they said, "Believe on the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." And they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. This is how the church at Philippi is started. It starts with the salvation of an entrepreneur, a business owner, a possessed slave girl, and a jailer. What a motley crew. And verse 35 through 40 says that the next day the magistrates are going to call for Paul and Silas, and then they're going to find out that Paul's a Roman citizen, and now they're trembling because they have beaten a Roman citizen unjustly. And when they finally get to Paul, they say, "Listen, would you just do us a favor? Leave the city." Verse 40. They went out of the prison, visited Lydia, and when they had seen the brothers, they encouraged them, and they departed. That's the beginning. That's the little kernel that is planted in Macedonia. Now, fast forward about 10 years. What happened 10 years ago in your life? We're in 2026. What was going on in 2016? I have no idea. We're going to forward about 10 years in this life of Philippi, life of the Philippians. And we're going to note that there's been lots of things that have gone on in Paul's life. Paul has finished up his second missionary journey, tried to go on a third, and eventually he makes his way down to Jerusalem. He's worshiping in the temple, and the jealous Jews stir up a mob. Roman soldier grabs him, puts him in prison, and such begins a life for Paul where he's going to be threatened of his life and he's going to appeal to Caesar. Lots of injustices are going to happen. It's going to be a shipwreck. What we find after 10 years, Paul's going to make it to Rome. He's been working through the court system, and now he is in Rome. And because he's appealed to Caesar, that would be Nero in these days, he's waiting for a trial before the Grand Duke himself. He's renting a home. He's chained, whether it's his hands or his feet. He's chained with a chain about that long to another soldier. 24/7. Chained to a guard in a rented house in prison. It's at this time, it's about 61, 62 AD, that he's going to write 4 books of our Bible, and we're going to call them the prison epistles: Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and then that little small book, Philemon. Those are the prison epistles, and that's the background for this book. 10 years ago, a slave, an entrepreneur, a jailer. Now, a thriving church. One that has partnered with Paul ever since they've known him. Several pieces of the overall puzzle. But what I want to know is this. If that's the context, if that's the background, what I want to know is this. Why are we looking at it? Why is the context so important? And I've got 2 or 3 things I want to give you for this. One, whenever you come to a book study that's the brand new, the context is important because it makes the themes more relevant. I don't want to give you the impression that the themes of Philippians aren't relevant, but when you consider these elements, such as there's very little Jewish influence in Philippi, to the point no synagogue in this leading city, verse 12 says, it's a Roman colony, there's no synagogue because there's no Jews. That does speak something. In some ways, that speaks volumes because there's a good chance that the Jews may have been there, but because of the sign of the times, because of the political pressure, because of Nero and his hatred for Christians, there is a very good chance, scholars believe, that the Jews were driven out into exile. You think about some of your later books. Think about Peter, who's writing to these believers that are scattered abroad. James, another one, writing to believers that are scattered abroad. They were displaced from their home, wherever their home is. Displaced because they're in exile. Paul comes into the leading city. Paul comes into a Roman colony. There's no Jews, and there's no Jews probably because they've been kicked out of town. They have to go and find somewhere else. Now, take that. Fold into Paul being in prison while he's writing this book, and then consider this theme that you'll find in this book. Count it joyful. Rejoice in the Lord. When you think about exile, is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think? I wouldn't want to be exiled. Let's say the police come into your home tonight and say, here's an edict, you're out of here, we're taking over. Somebody says, well, that never happened. You know, it could. It could happen. We were in a place one time where now I don't know where you live as far as like road systems are concerned, but we were in a place one time where, you know, the roads were paved and traffic was terrible, so the municipality came in and said, we're going to expand our roads, and if you live within like 100 yards of the road, we're going to call that imminent, what's the next word? Lots of people lost their homes because the government needed that land. If they come into your home and say, sorry, we really feel for you, but out, here's the edict, and we can do it. What would you do? Thank you. I've been looking for a reason to leave my home. Most of us would say, you'll see my attorney tomorrow. We're facing exile simply because that's not a good thing. If we're in prison, it's probably not a happy place. And yet, the very one who's in prison, chained to a guard, writing to people that really are probably under derision and duress, has this theme of joy. When you come to that rejoicing, it really rises above your circumstances. Maybe I can illustrate it this way. Have you ever been inconvenienced? We've done a lot of traveling over the last few months. And we've put on a lot of miles, vehicles, the last few months. And you know what I hate when I'm traveling? Maybe you love this. I hate it with a great derision. When I'm on the interstate, speed limit sign says 70 miles an hour, and I'm on a parking lot. I hate that. We were coming home from graduation, and we were on the interstate, and there was a stretch. I mean, it's probably about an hour-long stretch where it's the rubber band hour. We're going 15 miles an hour. Put, 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 put. Watching the little Zoom car kind of doing this, around the trucks. You're thinking, I don't let him go. I don't need an accident. Put, put, put. And then you all of a sudden just, zoom, you're at 70. Yeah, it's only to slow back down to put, put. For no reason. I mean, you're in that for 15, 20 minutes. You think, okay, there's going to be an accident somewhere. Start rubbernecking, kids. And then, where did it go? Just, I hate that. It's so frustrating. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard to have joy when I'm inconvenienced like that. Hard to have joy. And I could even quote Bible verses like Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, just to rub it in there, again, I say what? Rejoice. My spirit just gets vexed. Because I'm inconvenienced. Sign says 70. There's no accident. Why are we going 15? I want to get where I'm going. I want to get there as quick as I can. So don't inconvenience me with a putt. But what if my circumstances aren't defined in inconvenience? What if my circumstances involve exile or maybe the loss of a job? That could happen, right? What if my circumstances involves a threat? You conform or you don't. There are companies out there. I talked to a guy and they have whole meetings about how to get along with things and lifestyles that are very prominent today that are not Bible. And it was under threat to conform and to embrace. What if my circumstances involve people that are making a profit off of me while I stay poor? What if my circumstances involve beatings and lashings, jail? What if my circumstances are not inconvenient? My circumstances are dire. That's the whole book of Philippians. And if that is my circumstance, then the tone of this book is going to take on a whole new meaning when I understand that's what these people were facing. One of the themes in the midst of dire circumstances, rejoice. Do you ever face dire circumstances? When you do, this book is for you. Because our rejoicing is not based upon circumstances. It's based in our service to the King. Knowing the context helps the themes be more relevant. Number 2, knowing the context is important because it helps me really keep a unifying church perspective. This is something I just love. Notice the first 2 converts that we have. One of them is the seller of purple. Her name is what? Lydia. Who's the second one? She's the demon-possessed slave. Both of those people are what gender? That's beautiful to me. They are Gentile women. That's beautiful to me because that's a great big no-no in the ancient world. And yet God is going to use these women in extraordinary ways. That's one of the things that you ladies are going to study this summer, 12 extraordinary women. And that's a beautiful study because he uses ladies over and over and over and over and over again. And here's two of them. I don't want to make too much of that. And I probably don't need to stay here very long because I don't know that we have any issues with women serving in our church, but there are some churches that do. And that's grievous. I recently had a conversation with other pastors about the place of women in missions. That was a terrible conversation. I totally disagreed with much of what was said. I'm thankful for the scriptures pointing out, elevating ladies in the Bible. And I am thankful for ladies in our ministry here that serve in all that you do. Some of you teach Sunday school. Some of you are holding Bible studies. Some of you are running the Helps ministries. You have a valuable place here. I love you for doing it. Your service does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. We need you, and we are thankful for you, and we value your service. So, whether you're a young man, a young lady, an old man, or an old lady, or somewhere in between, serve God. He's got a place for you. You see it right in the start of this church. I think it's important to consider the context in order to recognize the church makeup. Here you have three people of all classes, and different financial conditions. These people run from professional occupation, Lydia, seller of purple, to the lowest jobs imaginable. You're the jailer, to no job at all. You're a slave. I mean, there is diversity here, right? And yet this church has a real heart to serve others. Paul tells the Corinthians that it's the Philippians, those from Macedonia, who were in deep poverty, and yet they give out of their deep poverty generously to send money back to Jerusalem to just support those people there. They have a heart for people that they don't even know. They have a heart for Paul. Paul says in chapter 4, verse 15, you have supported me from the beginning. And we're not sure if that's from the beginning when I first walked into Philippi or if it's the beginning when you heard that I went to prison. We're not sure which the beginning was, but it was early and it was often. And you see it, even the fact that they gave themselves. Epaphroditus is going to come and take money to Paul, and he's going to almost die getting there. These people, the makeup of this church, different, diverse, and that didn't bother them. They loved God's people just as much too. And I think about the makeup of our church. Aren't we from all walks of life? Aren't we from all different ages, different financial backgrounds? Don't we have different trials and tribulations? We do. And yet, I really commend you. You have a heart for God by serving people. I've made this comment to multiples, even outside of our church. But if we have a need, baby just born, there's a sign-up sheet out there. I don't know if there's a sign-up sheet right now, but baby's born, sign-up sheet goes up, meals for, man, it's filled in. We have a need for cutting grass or throwing snow. Sign up on the board. I mean, you people, if there's a need, there's a sign-up and it gets full. You serve other people. You love providing for them. And yet, there's always room for improvement. And we have an advantage over these Philippians who gave in similar ways. Our advantage is that we can see what they did. And we can see their service. And we could mimic them as we become more and more like Christ. I think it's valuable to see this unity and how ministry is working through a church like this. Finally, I'd say it's important to study a book, this context, because it really is not about the size. It's not the size that's important. It's the service to God. This is a church that is within the living space and corner of a Roman colony. And yet, in the midst of an important city like that, there's only a handful of those that are in this church. We don't see or don't seem to reflect that this place was a hotbed for gospel growth. It's a privileged city. There's very few of these that are throughout Rome, but the Christians, like Paul, is beaten, he's jailed, asked to leave. The jailer has to wash his wounds and give care to him. News of this is going to travel pretty quickly, and the chances are this church never grew to be a mega church. They were small, but they're faithful. And they're a model of faithfulness that God sees, Paul commends. And it's out there on display. One for us to mimic. Now, that's as far as I want to go this morning. That's enough. But I want to encourage us to maybe spend some time this week faithfully looking through this book and seeing how the Lord puts things on display for us to mimic too. I would encourage us this way. As you are studying the Word of God this week, target someone. Target somebody in your small group for this week. And here's what I would encourage you to do. This kind of goes back to our goals. But why don't you ask someone for coffee? Take them out to tea. You know what? Take them for a round of golf. That'd be kind of fun, right? Even if you've never golfed, you can pay a farmer to just chunk up his yard. Whenever I golf, I swing, and the guy comes running out the door and says, "Oh, please don't do that again." Take them golfing. Go for tea, coffee, spend some time with somebody else. Encourage them in the Lord. Like the Philippians encourage Paul. Share some needs with them. Share some time in prayer with them. Spend some time encouraging someone in this room this week, outside of this place, alone for the Lord. I think you'll find encouragement for you and for them. I'd encourage you, second of all, take part in this small group fellowship tonight. Endeavor to go, and when you go with determination that you are going to get to know someone in that group. Write down a few questions that you can ask and enjoy the fellowship that God has with His people tonight. And then I would say this. Ask the Lord to give you gospel growth, gospel witness this week. You're going to talk to somebody within your sphere of influence. One of them may be like this demon-possessed girl. I don't know that we're going to find somebody who is demon-possessed. You might. But I would think it's probably more probable you're going to meet somebody who's silently discouraged, maybe depressed, because life is hard right now. They're in your sphere of influence. Ask the Lord to point you to them. Ask the Lord to give you the question to ask them so that they just open up. Giving you the chance to share Christ. Ask the Lord to give you opportunity to show them and give them hope. May the Lord help us as we endeavor to be faithful to him this week. Let's pray.